Derrick with Conscious Resistance Network. Today I am joined by a friend of mine, amazing activist, organizer, very well-known person here in Texas and specifically in the Austin area, Mr. Scott Crow. How are you doing today, bro?
Hey, I'm really good. Super glad to be back on again. Thanks, Derrick.
Yeah, I wanted to catch up with you. It's been a while since we talked last, but before we get into what you're doing now and get into some deeper topics, I'd like you to go ahead and, introduce yourself to the audience a bit about who is Scott Crow these days?
Oh my gosh, who's Scott Crow? I guess lately I'm an author and speaker. I've been traveling a lot internationally, talking to communities, nonprofit groups, to individuals in their schools, talking about how we might change the way we engage in politics. I've also been a co-op worker, a co-op starter, I've been an anarchist, I've been an activist, an organizer, a father, a roustabout, I guess a lot of things.
Jack of all trades.
Sure.
Fight the state in all kinds of ways.
Absolutely, just whatever it takes to build power from below.
Exactly. Yeah. So I definitely don't want to understate any of Scott's contributions because we've talked before about the Common Ground Collective, and if the audience is unaware of that, please do look into what the Common Ground Collective was all about and the great work they did after Hurricane Katrina and Scott's involvement in that, among many other things in Austin, Texas. And so you mentioned being an author and speaker lately. How has that been going? What books are you pushing right now? I guess, or what message is out there that you're currently touring with right now?
There's actually a few things. I've been talking about worker co-ops. I've also been talking about surveillance state, and I've been talking about how to build power from below. And those three talks have been kind of variations on it. I've been on this tour for the last couple of years. Of reflections of liberation, which is just about thinking about individual and collective liberation in different ways. And so there's different talks. The media talk about how we might engage, ourselves and our communities in different ways than we have in the past. Instead of moving from politics is the modernization of just resisting exploitation, resisting oppression, to actually thinking about what is it that we're for and then beginning to build for that. It's not, and when I say build for that, I don't mean separate. We must still resist oppression and exploitation, but how do we do these things together? And so that's the idea we've been exploring.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're pushing this point out, because I think it's in 2014. It's time for activists, anyone concerned around the world, whether you consider yourself to be an anarchist or not, to if you see the problems that we're facing, whatever those may be, in your view, it's time to start building solutions to those things. I mean, I think we're way past that point now where we have to continue to educate people about the oppression and about the crimes that are taking place in the world, and as you said, the surveillance state and how that affects all people. But we also have to try to find solutions, and with the internet, we're able to reach all kinds of people and communicate, and technology itself, we have to find ways to empower ourselves, I believe, to find these solutions while still working to eradicate them themselves.
Right. And a lot of the tour, a lot of this is built on my personal experience and how to deal with repression from the FBI and the Joint Terrorism Task Force for about 10 years, but also from what happened at Common Ground in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, where we really got to see how the politics of possibility became more important than just the politics of opposition. And so I've been using that and talking to a lot of people about that as a foundation for us to begin to move forward in different ways. And I don't know what that is. It's not one size fits all for everyone, but to ask these questions and to explore the ideas differently. And it's not like an abstract, theoretical conversation, but how do we begin to move forward? How do we stop just protesting against these things and start to build alternative structures, counter institutions that are liberatory, but also bring us into conflict with the state?
What type of solutions do you see, or have you been able to come to in your own thinking on that and discussions with others?
Well, I think there's some basic ideas that are common everywhere, which is that we need healthcare, education, and in the shorter term, we need job dignity. I think that work is a longer conversation, but I think in the short term, we need job dignity. And so we need to stop putting our resources into going to work other places and doing activism on the side, or putting our kids in schools where they're not getting a good education because they're living. We need to start to create these things. And we need to make sure they don't just become literal, comfortable things just for a few people with privilege, people with access to privilege, but they become liberatory. They actually mean something to somebody. But we start to build a smaller infrastructure, bit by bit, everywhere. some areas that point us in those directions. Now, of course, they don't provide us the answers. They just give signposts and lead us to where we want to go.
Awesome, great work. I'm glad to see you focusing on that. So you're going around and doing speaking tours. Right now, you're back home in Austin.
Yes. I've been on the road for about 6 weeks, and I just came home for about 3 weeks, and I'm back out for another 6 weeks or so. I'm trying to look at all the places where nobody goes to speak, or very rarely people go to speak, because people need to engage these communities all across this country, everywhere, you know.
Absolutely.
I'm not a messenger, I just have some words to share.
You know, and I appreciate that you say that, Scott, because one of the things that you said, I think, probably the first time that we either did an interview or just sat down and talked together was something along those lines, and just was a gentle reminder. And I don't even think you were maybe directing it towards me, but it was just something that you naturally say, and it reinforced some important principles for me that, you know, it's not about Scott Crow or Derrick Rose or any individuals at all. It's about just communicating this message that for whatever reason, different individuals choose to take up and figure, hey, I need to help other people see these ideas and see how we can work together. But it's not about us as individuals. And so I really appreciate that sentiment. And that's something that you said before that stuck with me since then.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I think it's important, especially if people are public like we are. I think it's really important to recognize that we are not the voice of this movement or that movement or any ideas. We are just people who are voicing our opinions about these ideas, and I think that's a really important thing. It's an important responsibility to have, you know.
Yeah, definitely, and it is an important responsibility, and one that I try to use as best possible. And doing things like this, bringing the awareness to these topics. So we're talking about community organizing. We're talking about, of course, solutions from the bottom instead of these top-down hierarchical institution solutions. How do you see us beginning to apply these things? You know, we're talking about, okay, well, instead of just one healthcare center or, you know, one community garden here where it's, you know, benefiting, as you said, the privileged, or only, you know, people with privilege have access to it and things like that. How do we get past those steps? How do we get past, say, the limitations of the state and licensing and all these roadblocks that are put up to people who just generally want to go do good work?
Well, I think we have to begin asking the questions first. What is the world, or what are the worlds that we want to live in, and then how do we create them? And then also, I think the other question we have to begin to ask is, what does liberation look like? What does my individual liberation look like? What does our collective liberation look like? And then I think we begin to build these projects a little bit by little bit, because we have them here. You know, there's worker co-ops here, there's community gardens over there, but they're not really connected. So how do we connect them? Not just a network, but how do we connect them in liberatory ways that actually make a difference in people's lives? And those are the answers I don't have, but I want us to start to explore. And I think that you know, the way I always look at it is it looks different everywhere. Mm-hmm. You know, for me, you know, disasters, man-made and economic disasters, you know, really reveal the failures of the state, right? But and so we can see we need to rush in and push in and do these things. But how do we do that in the long, slower disasters that happen to communities and individuals every day under capitalism? And under not just the economic systems, but all the systems of power within the social, cultural, economic systems. And so I think we begin to ask those questions, and then we begin to move forward, taking step by step. And I think you know, get drawn from the Zapatista, who are not anarchists in any way, but they're very based on liberatory. So we don't have to have 1, 2, 3 steps to revolution. That we begin to walk down these paths, and that if they don't work, then we change the direction of the path. We don't say, well, we've already started in this direction, it must be that way. Building liberation is never going to look like, there's never a final product to it, right? There's no end to it, there's no program, there's no project that's going to make you very liberatory. But liberation and collective liberation looks the same everywhere. There's similar ideas about how we engage with each other, how we take care of each other, how we interact with the natural world, and I think that you know, there's a short-term dealing with why we're still under capitalism and all its manifestations, but also the larger thing is what's it look like beyond that. And I don't want to replace one economic system with another. I want us to change all of our social relationships. And this is not pie in the sky. I think this is all doable stuff. But we as communities and as individuals have to start asking those questions of each other and begin to take these steps forward. And the steps we take today is not going to look the same 5 years from now or 10 years from now. I hope it's not. I hope it looks different. but I hope that we start taking the steps today, or continue to take those steps for the communities that are already doing it.
Yeah, I agree on that, and I like that you hit the point there about open experimentation. That you can't just sit around waiting and debating and imagining that we're going to come up with the perfect solution that fixes everything, or the perfect steps are just going to lay out in front of us. We have to start taking these steps now, and like you said, as we grow, they're going to change and evolve. And also a very important point that you hit upon is that these solutions look different in different areas, based on environment, based on needs, all types of things that affect that. And that's, I personally am not working towards any type of one-size-fits-all solution, because I think that's why we're in the situation that we are, where people try to fit these unsustainable models on individuals and on our intentions and our desires to be free and to interact with each other, and make them conform into these really strict models that don't benefit the people using them, except for the elite at the top of it. So it's important for us to continue to push for ideas. To start these conversations is definitely where it's at, because awareness is key. I mean, if we're not aware of what's happening, if we're not having these conversations, then the steps aren't going to be taken. But we have to get to that place of action as well, and begin taking those steps.
Right, and I think one of the things is having to talk, we did build infrastructure, different communities have built infrastructure for a long time, there's been lots of radical communities, but a lot of times we build infrastructure like childcare or healthcare or schools or anything, often becomes removed from the revolutionary potential or its liberatory potential. And so what I'm asking is, how do we build these things that are interconnected? How does the community garden, or the community gardens that we build, how do they support resistance communities? How do resistance communities also take part in community gardens that's not seen as a separate thing? And how do these things also bring us into conflict with the state, which we still need, but also have this liberatory potential to be safe? Right? And these are things that I don't have the answers to. If I did, I'd be writing that book and just sell that book and be done with it. It was all relaxed. But we don't. I think we all have to explore this. But I think also there's a lot more complex questions that come to this, so we have to start taking these steps. And I think, like in New Orleans, we took these steps to build these clinics. We built community gardens. We also resisted the police. We also resisted white vigilantes. We resisted landlords who were evicting people. All these things were interrelated. So again, I'm trying to draw those experiences to try to share with people to see how we might do these things differently.
Now, a moment ago you said, that draws, taking steps that also at the same time as we're building and connecting and keeping the revolutionary communities connected to these activities and these solutions, that also taking steps that will draw us into conflict with the state. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I think that otherwise what happens if we just build an institution, we just build a health clinic, or multiple health clinics, and they just become part of the system. They just become band-aids for the system. At some point, they still have to need to be in conflict or have some dissonance with the state. And I would say that the state has to raise and everything, but how do they actually glaringly show the failures of the state? And that would be a way to be in conflict, but also provide a safe place for people to still get the medical attention. Because we don't want to just create alternatives within capitalism. We want alternatives for when capitalism is gone, for when state socialism is gone, for whatever economic systems we're trying to take over those battles. We want to create these autonomous communities that are self-sufficient in different ways, but also are liberatory. And again, I don't know what these answers are, but again, we're taking the paths together to begin to explore these ideas.
Do you think that there is, if we both seem to recognize that the system that we're calling, that we're dealing with right now is unsustainable and is marching towards its failure, its demise sooner or later, and that's why we need to work on these communities so we can have solutions. We can be proactive right now instead of waiting for later for that help from FEMA or Red Cross to come, or from, or we can go riot and loot and do things like that, or we can have communities and solutions prepared. Now, do you think it's possible for us to continue down that path, continue opposing the state when necessary, when possible, to show people the failures of that, and the state will collapse without any kind of conflict? Do you think that is possible? Or do you think that...
Not at all. I would love a hunky-dory story that we just build the institutions and the state withers away, everything's fantastic. That's not the truth, right? That the state, and actually it's bigger than the state, it's power, the capital P, those who maintain social, economic, political, and cultural control. It's not a secret cabal that those who maintain and keep that influence, they're not going to give it up. They're going to drain oil until they can't get it out of the soil anymore. And they're going to kill people along the way. They're going to destroy the environment and kill other people in the So we do need to come in conflict with them. Anybody who treats the planet as resources, I mean, all those things are bringing us into conflict. Those who engage in social relations that maintain power over the rest of us, trying to marginalize people within civil society, whether because they're queer, because they're trans, or because they're not from some country or whatever, whatever things they use for exclusion. Of course, those are always going to bring us into conflict with the state, and we should be there to meet those challenges. But the thing is, we don't need to focus on that only. We need these other liberatory institutions, and I call them institutions, quote unquote, because I don't want them to be living in dynamic. They don't exist for themselves. But we need both of these to work together hand in hand to build strength. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And again, if I had to answer exactly how this would look, it would be a lot easier, but I don't. You and I are exploring this conversation, your listeners are exploring this conversation, and it's not a conversation removed from the real world. I want to know, how does this work for my mom? How does this work for the brother and sister on the block? How do we work together to make these things happen today or tomorrow?
Absolutely, 100%. I agree with that. And, it is important to note that we don't have these answers yet, or we would have done this, but this is how the solutions are created, by these conversations, by discussing these things and being willing to address the problems that we are facing. Now, I tend to agree that at some point, no matter how weak the state gets, whenever the state has, and the state, and again, as you said, not even just the state, but those who reinforce the state's power, who will maintain that power, whether or not we have the United States government or not, maybe they'll buy a Blackwater Army or something, and they're gonna, they'll find some way to try to reinforce and keep that, maintain some level of power, so they don't lose what they fought so hard for. I believe that, that at their last gasp, they would, reach out to communities who are starting to live more free and create solutions, and other people are seeing, wow, this unsustainable system no longer works, and look at these people, they're doing alternatives, they're doing things differently, and they're succeeding. They're not just going to let that happen without some type of opposition.
Right. And the thing is that we're talking a lot about these unknown futures, right? I'm not an apocalypse scenario person. Climate change is real. We don't know what the effects are going to be, but climate change is absolutely undeniable. But so is the long, slow history of empires, right? All empires fall. All economic systems that have existed, as long as humans have been on here, have collapsed at some point, and this one will collapse. So when I say that, I don't know what's going to happen next week. I'm not going to tell it, or it's going to happen in our lifetimes. But I know it changes what happens. So why don't we start building these paths for these futures, for these future generations? And what's the worst thing that happens if nothing changes dramatically in our lives? Is when we've changed our social relationships with each other. We have built infrastructure that is absolutely solid and takes care of people. We've rebuilt our communities, and we've also made ourselves oppositional to the state. But we've also had something that we can show people by example of how it's lived, not just out in the woods in the country, but in our own cities, in our own towns, from coast to coast.
Absolutely, putting it into action is very important.
Right.
So I have a couple of other things I'd like to get into with you, Scott, and this one, I guess, it sort of touches on both topics here, and I think one of them's a dead horse, but we'll get into that in a minute. I saw a post that you made recently on Facebook about a song from, is it Soul? Yeah, I checked out this song, and so because a friend of mine showed it to me as well, and I'm a fan of his music, but I hadn't heard this song until
Great track.
Yeah, Fuck Alex Jones is the name of the title, and I can't disagree with that statement. But what I wanted to get into about that, what I thought was interesting is the interview with him, or I guess on his website when he was talking about the song, explaining his basis for wanting to do this, and he even kind of said he felt it was sort of silly to do a diss track towards Alex Jones, like he doesn't deserve the attention even, but he wanted to address what he saw as individuals. He specifically said people coming to his shows and things like that and bringing up topics like 9/11, things that he's not concerned with, and as he sees from his view that don't, they're not a part of his strategy and what he's after. So what I wanted to get at is because I feel that I'm a part of maybe a minority population that considers themselves to be aware of the world from the perspective of anarchism and community solutions and trying to fight things on that way, and the oppression coming from the state and from the ruling class, but at the same time looks into it as aware of conspiracies, and not conspiracy theories, but proven conspiracies, things that are happening, like conspiring against you guys and the Common Ground Collective. That's a conspiracy, things like that. And I'm open-minded enough to look into certain things. So what I wanted to address about that is there was one part where he said I wonder your thoughts on this. So he said he felt like people who get into the ideas, and some of these ideas that I guess Alex Jones shares, and for the record, I don't follow Alex Jones. I don't write for his website. I don't do anything like that. But I've been on his show 3 times for work that I've done as an activist, and I was more than happy to gain that audience because, like him or not, he has a huge audience, and I wanted the ability to grow our message and what we were doing at the time. So I have, in those ways, but I don't follow his work, and I don't do things like that, and I definitely don't agree with a lot of what he says. And I have seen people and met people who say things like, well, Alex says this, and it's really creepy stuff like that, and also who are, as Soul points out, says that people are basically pushed into fear and away from action. And I have met people like that as well, but I've also met plenty of other people who, and I don't say they're necessarily followers of Alex Jones, but again, the line of work or some of the crossover with topics, people who helped launch large marches and who participated in some of the anti-war with Syria marches and some of the bigger marches in the past few years, who believe in conspiracies and who do research conspiracy theories, but also are some of the busiest activists I know in their community. And I guess I just wanted to point out for that I believe that we're all dynamic people, and that we're not, it's not so simple as that, as I think that he made it in his statements about the song, even though I think the track is really important, and he does point out some important things, and I like how he throws in that he says he's a libertarian socialist, Google that, or something like that. But, and calling him out for, Alex Jones for, being like Rand Paul or some kind of fake libertarian or something along those lines. So I think he makes some good points in that song, but I just wanted to bring that up. So your thoughts on that, Scott?
Well, I think, like all songs and like all short posts, they hit everything with a broadsword so that you can get to the point quickly, right? So there's lots of subtleties and all of that. But, you bring up some good points about people who got more weight or aware, quote unquote, from Alex Jones, but they look at it anyway. People always rise up. Anytime there's an oppression, exploitation, people rise up. They don't need a loud enough person to tell them about it. And somebody mentioned with banks, I'm just like, and the Alex Jones is the damage one, when the bank is the king of it all, right? And, but my main agreement with Soul on that, who you should have on your show sometime and talk about it, is that conspiracy theories in general just distract us from the real conspiracies that are happening, right? Like, when you start going down the rabbit hole of one thing, then you're onto another thing, that's the margin message of the track, right? So yeah. I think that's really important because there's real conspiracies, right? Like what happened to me with Joint Terrorism Task Force and the FBI is a real conspiracy. There's no imagination to it. Everything you have to read it up is actually way further crazy than anything I can imagine. But if we go down the rabbit holes about all these other things like chemtrails and whatever things, I'm not even going to pick on any particular thing, they will stop focusing on real conditions where we powerless. And that's the biggest message that I think Alex Jones promotes, is that we are powerless. One, that things are, everything's dramatized, right? Like, it's way worse than it is, but also that we are powerless to do anything about it, because if it's a secret cabal or it's shape-shifting aliens or whatever it is, we can do nothing about it. And I said it's bullshit. We can do things about it. We actually can. It's not just about finding broken model filters from hell or more bullets and good. There's all kinds of things that we can do, right? And I think that's the important. I think, like I'm talking to someone about this, but I think that's the kind of common theme that comes out of it, even if it didn't come through in track,
Yeah. I got that.
Right,
Yeah, exactly. I got that part. I just wanted to bring that up, and I think you make some important points as well, because there were, I watched a couple Alex Jones documentaries, I guess you could say, in my early days, but that wasn't, I won't consider him to be the person who woke me up or helped me, finally see through, the Matrix. So I really think about it, or saw past the lies, basically. And I know a lot of people who felt like, oh yeah, for a moment, I found this website of this guy, and I noticed some of the things he was saying, but I didn't like the way he was talking or this or that, so I moved on and I discovered all these other really awesome things and went deeper. And that's kind of what I think it is for a lot of people. But
I hope it is for a lot of people, because I see that stuff. This is the problem. It's actually kind of a failure. Like, why isn't a show like yours more popular? Or because you're not promoting yourself like Allison's. You're not on the radio 4 hours a day. You're not trying to make sure. It's usually the people like Rush Limbaugh and Alex Jones and Glenn Beck. Why are they always the same kind of person? Right, and they're the ones that you see because they're self-promoters in this way that is nauseating. And they're building their capitalist empires being in opposition with the state. And I think that we need to recognize that, like that's what they are. I mean, they're just snake oil salesmen, and that's their whole deal. Gives some shit. They got an niche. And when people have authentic voices and have authentic reality, it's a lot harder for us to get our messages out there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't have a radio show. I'm not on there 4 hours a day, like trying to tell people to buy my products and that I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, And I think it's a lot harder. But who has the most lasting effect? I think you should get more people with touch than you do with putting on the eye.
Yeah, definitely. And it's important to note that like everybody does it in different ways, and whatever he's doing, whether it's there's a lot of thoughts on that, I guess you could say, but he's just one piece of what's happening. What I try to remind people is that if you're not following anyone, then it doesn't really matter. Okay, let Alex Jones be Alex Jones. If you're not obsessively blindly following him or anyone, then you don't have to worry about those things. If you're not blindly following Scott Crow, then you don't have to be disappointed whenever Scott turns into a human and makes a mistake or does something.
That's a real thing. And I think that there's a different premise to it. I don't really to my fault. I love authenticity. I think you are too, and to be fallible, to be human. Whereas a lot of people who put themselves in media positions do not. It's like, Alex could never be fallible. He could never be wrong. He's not the only one. But there's a problem with that model. I mean, not with the patriarchy and the white supremacy and all those kinds of things, but there's a problem with that model. And we need new kinds of leadership. And that's one of the things I think that, I think you and I explored that in private conversation, but that's where we try to be as public figures, but we try to be authentic and real and be accountable to those around us.
Definitely. I am working more on the accountable thing because if I'm going to be out there and if people are going to look to us for whatever reason, I'm going to encourage them to look to themselves and to try to hold myself to the same standard that I think we all need to be able to move forward. We can't go out there trying to profess these solutions while working against ourselves behind closed doors.
Okay, I agree with that, absolutely.
All right, bro. I appreciate your time tonight. I really wanted to
get
this conversation out there. Yeah, I'll come up there soon. I'm probably going to be out in Austin before I take off my bike tour and come see you a little bit. But if not, I look forward to seeing the work that you're doing. And go ahead and let everybody know where they can find out more about what you're up to and where you'll be appearing this coming year.
Okay, so you can find me on my website, scottcrow.org, O-R-G. That's Crow is in the bird, not the actor. There's no E on it, scottcrow.org. You can find essays on me, you can find interviews. I have 2 books, Black Flags and Windmills is being reissued in the 2nd edition and expanded revised edition, which should be out as early as June. And you should definitely pick that up. There's a lot more information in it, not just about nuance, but about surveillance and about other things. I have an essay, another book coming out about the global land grab, which is talking about gentrification, talking about people trying to take back their lands all across the world. That will be out in AK Press, I think this month, or in May, it comes out in May. And I'll be, the next tour dates I have California, Oregon, New Hampshire, Washington State, New York State, and Providence, Rhode Island, and Maine. So I'll be around. Awesome. And you can find me on Facebook, or you can find me on Twitter, or find me on the website, and I love engaging with people.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. Looking forward to see what you do this year.
Keep it going. Thanks.
Peace.
Take care. Peace.